What is going on, everyone? Justin here from the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. And in just a moment, we'll be talking about bringing on a good friend of mine, Steve Barber. He is the host of the Armchair Booking Wrestling podcast and Cubicle Chat. Excited to bring him on. It's been a while to talk to him on our show. And we'll get into a lot of fun conversations here in just a moment. But before we could do so, we want to go ahead and give a big, quick shout out to StreamYard Studios, the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel, where you could create podcasts, videos, host virtual business meetings, and even conduct interviews. Check out their free version today at StreamYard.com. All right. Well, without further ado, Steve Barber is here on the other line. Welcome. Thank you for taking your time. I've been trying to negotiate a time with you. I know schedule lately has been very hard, but how are you doing today?
Doing all right, Justin. How you been?
I've been wonderful. Trying to, stay warm out of the winter weathers we've been having. We just actually, for people who don't know, we actually just did a podcast together. I joined on your show a couple
Yes.
of days ago, and you are the host, and I would say founder of two podcasts that you run simultaneously. One
Yes, sir.
is Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast, which is a wrestling podcast that's been in the works for what, 2-3 years?
Actually, this June or July it'll mark 4 years.
4 years.
Yes,
Wow.
sir.
And then you just started up a recent podcast. Was it last year called Cubicle
Um,
Chat or the year
it
before?
I want to say is April will be 2 years. This
Oh,
coming April. Yeah, I was even thinking about that this morning. I was like, hey, wow, has it really been that long? And the cubicle chat was kind of my way of researching and talking about something other than wrestling because the job I had at the time, the job that I actually left last May, at work, I started being known as the wrestling podcast guy because of Armchair
right.
Booking.
Mhm.
And people at that, I mean, they did swear they were, they weren't like laughing at me, but they were like, "Oh yeah, you had the wrestling podcast," because then you find out all the people who are wresling fans that hey, why don't you listen to it, check it out, whatever. Um, but at the same time, like there's a lot more to me than just that because I'm retired military.
Mhm.
I actually have been to college. I mean, I actually have an MBA for God's sake. So it's not like I just focus on wrestling. I might have other stuff. In fact, we were talking. You were on the show. It was yesterday, and I actually pulled up Excel and Microsoft Excel, and I'm actually really good at doing that. So I could, so
Yeah.
there's, I try to be um almost a jack of all trades, master of none, or master of very little. I can't really say I'm a master of anything, but yeah, the cubicle chat, the name came from some of the conversations that my coworkers and I were actually having. We were literally sitting in a cubicle farm.
Right.
And if people don't know what a cubicle farm is, of course, I mean, you walk into like an office setting and you see a bunch of cubicles and you see people in those cubicles. It almost looks like, I don't know, like chicken coops or horse stables.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, so the name Cubicle Farm was created at some point, and the conversations we were having, I mean, because we were all, I'd say, at least fairly intelligent people. So we were talking about anything and everything under the sun, and not wrestling. As every once in a while, it would come up because something from wrestling would actually hit mainstream news, and so they would actually ask me. But then we were talking about other things too, like yesterday, for example, before you came on Armchair Booking, I actually recorded an episode of Cubicle Chat talking all about the USS Pueblo, which was a ship that was actually captured by the North Koreans, and then the North Koreans still have it. But I was
Okay.
talking about that. I mean, I've talked about military stories. I've given movie reviews, TV show reviews, music reviews, like concert reviews, because the latest concert I went to a few weeks ago, I went and saw Trans-Siberian Orchestra in Dayton. I'd been waiting, 30 years to see them, even before they were known as Trans-Siberian Orchestra, before they were their previous name of Savatage. So
Yeah.
I've been a fan of theirs for a while. Saw Kiss a few months ago back in the fall. Took my son to see
I know.
Kiss.
I missed that one. I mean, they're on their what ending tour? Oh, they
They're
just
done. They're
they're
done
done.
now. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
actually done. But I mean, those guys, they're in their 70s. I mean, so I can't get
Right.
mad at them for, I mean,
But
because
they're
they've been
still
going.
performing like they're in their 20s, to be
Yes,
honest,
but
which is
but
incredible.
exactly. And I've just given things like that. It's sometimes it almost feels like I'm doing like an editorial, but I mean, always want to keep the shows, the episodes going. And just recently, I became part of the Stoveleg Media family because
Yes.
I happened to. Um, it's kind of a weird train in a chain of events that kind of happened. I was listening to Chris Jericho's podcast. Well, in Chris Jericho, yes, he's a wrestler. He's also the lead singer of a band, Fozzy. And, well, he also has a podcast. And his podcast, yes, he has wrestlers on there, but he has so many other things going on, because he's had actual other basically rock stars, because Chris Jericho is a legitimate rock star. But one of the shows he had on there were these two guys, Jamie Boggs, John Bailey, and they were talking about a serial killer in Montana, back in the 80s. But they have their own podcast called True Crimecast.
Mm.
And how they got in touch with Chris Jericho was Chris Jericho actually went to school with a guy, and he was friends with a guy who later on ended up being a serial killer. And so they had contacted him about that, some years ago, and he came on their show. And since then, they've been on his show, I want to say at least 4 times, maybe 5. But I started listening to their podcast, and it turns out I could hear their accents. They're from Berea, Kentucky, which is actually not that far away from where you live in Kentucky, and really not that far away from me either in Southwest Ohio. And I started listening to their show, got in contact with them. And then it turns out they also had a show called Bless Their Hearts, which was what they call their palate cleanser, where they're not talking and researching murder all the time, because that can kind of get to you. That can screw with your head after a while, just looking at things like that. Got in touch with them. I actually have written a few stories for them since then. Well, they're part of the Stoveleg Media family.
Mm-hmm.
And so the owner, director, producer, the main guy who runs Stoveleg Media, I named Nate Metz. I actually got in touch with him through, I fact, it was Jamie that said, "Oh yeah, here's his email address. I'm pretty sure he'd love to come on Cubicle Chat." And I was not intending on becoming part of the Stoveleg Media family at the time. It just ended up happening over time, because Nate actually, because he and I actually talked about like running a podcasting network, not just doing a podcast, because he has his own podcast called Mysteries of the Ohio Valley, where he talks about what he says, everything from Pittsburgh to Paducah, everything along the Ohio River, basically. And, since, obviously we became friends, and now I'm part of the Stoveleg Media family, which includes those 3 aforementioned podcasts, along with a lot of other ones, so go check that out as well. But yeah, the Armchair Booking podcast, that's not part of a network right now. Possibility could be in the future. We've talked about my co-host, Dwaylen Davis. You stepped in yesterday. Dwaylen is actually on a hiatus right now. He's got a lot of stuff he's trying to take care of, and kind of very similar to when the podcast first started, and he was not able to join as co-host, because Dwaylen and I actually talked about doing this podcast a good 2-3 years before it ever actually came to fruition. But I was very grateful to Kyle for stepping in and being the co-host for it was just a barely over a year. But then he had to step down because he had stuff going on. It happens. I mean, you and I both know what that's like. I mean, we have families, and so sometimes family things have to take priority, and other things, job matters have to take priority. And but right now Dwaylen's on a hiatus because he's been running like nonstop, and he just, and I get it. And so he actually gave me the blessing to have people come on as co-hosts like yourself and some other ones that we have coming on. Undetermined when he's going to come back, but he also has his own podcast called the Intellectual Rockstar, which he's also had to kind of put on the back burner for a bit,
Right.
But
I do follow that one, and I hope that when he, comes back from his hiatus, I can find a way to get in contact with him and get him on an interview as well, because he has so much other stuff going on beyond Armchair Booking podcast. Just real quick though, because I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of radio. I grew up and lived by the radio in the sense. So audio for me is a lot better than, putting my show out, and I'm sure same thing for you, but putting on YouTube is just just an addition to what we're trying to do. and it means something, but it doesn't. It doesn't. It's not what we're really. I don't have that camera face, you know.
Oh, right. Neither do I. Trust me. I'm
So, but when I hear podcasts often, sometimes people click and people don't click. It's a chemistry thing. I listen to a radio station in San Diego. They've been, in some morning show. They're called Ben and Woods. And when I was listening to them, they attract my attention. That's why I gravitate to them. But they just click. It's two guys that know how to click. When it comes down to you and Dwaylen, he's the encyclopedia. That's his nickname. It's been established before. I'm just gonna call you, I'm gonna call you Colonel. I mean,
Colonel.
I don't. Do we established you a nickname?
No, I mean,
Or?
Stunning Steve. I mean, that came about.
Stunning
Kyle actually gave me
Steve?
that name. And Dwaylen is Delicious Dwaylen. Now that one came about because his wife referred to him as that on Facebook, and then Kyle actually said that ought to be your nickname, and I just replied, "Done." And that was, probably a year and a half ago or so, and so it's been his nickname ever since.
But the reason why I'm saying, and I'm just throwing it out there as a suggestion. I mean, maybe you want to as a Colonel, because I mean, I see you kind of put everything together. You got you put the platform out there for everyone to succeed at Armchair Booking Podcast. But you guys had to go back all the way to high school days, and you guys just had this chemistry that clicks so well. For that, you guys have not done a single in-person session before, and you guys could just read each other's minds. You guys, kind of could pick each other up. Something that I say a good amount of podcast or a good amount of audio productions are that there at that level.
Because like I said, Dwayne and I, we've been friends since high school, our junior year of high school, actually. And that was actually when I met him, because this was in Hopkinsville, Kentucky, in Christian County High School. And I moved to Hopkinsville in 1988, in the summer of 1988. That was right before my sophomore year, or mine and Dwaylen's both our sophomore year. I'd seen him around the halls, but I didn't really know him. It was the next year when we actually had I think it was actually probably at lunch or something like that, because we had figured out we had a lot of common friends, and and so we started hanging out, because one of the things I always joke and say, we came to school both wearing the same AC/DC t-shirt, and it's like, hey, that's kind of a bonding thing. If you look, I'm wearing an Iron Maiden shirt right now, so I mean, I'm self-professed metalhead, and that's one of the things when you see another metalhead, or somebody who's into the same kind of, but your same interests, you kind of gravitate towards them. And that was even before we both figured out we were both wrestling fans. That actually didn't come about for a while. But when we did, it was like, hey, that's something else. And so, he's just been one of my best friends, one of my closest friends now for, 30 plus years. And that was before podcasting was even a thing. This was before everybody had the internet. It was before email, everything. And we had actually lost touch for a little bit after I went into the Air Force. And it was just, we happened to both move at the same time, and we had just lost touch. And then when we finally got back in touch through, I think it was Facebook, where it's like, hey, boom. And we just picked up like it was there. And the last time I've actually seen Dwaylen in person is actually almost 10 years to the day.
Okay.
Yeah, because he and, they had a house fire or apartment fire where he lived, and they lost almost everything they owned, and so I actually gathered a bunch of stuff, and I drove down because he now lives in West Paducah. And I actually drove down and delivered a lot of stuff to him over a weekend, and then came back. But that's the last time we were able to actually hang out, because I think he posted that picture. It was either yesterday or the day before on Facebook.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet. I'm gonna have to look at that. Steve here from Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast at Cubicle Chat. Now, you are the host of 2 podcasts that you've created. Can you kind of just walk us through how was 2023 for both podcasts for you?
2023 started out very hectic for both podcasts, and that was due to my work schedule. And this was actually part of the reason why I ended up leaving my previous position. So as far as Cubicle Chat, I also had a co-host on Cubicle Chat at the beginning of 2023, but he stepped down not long into 2023. It was another former Air Force co-worker, but he's still a good friend of mine, a guy named Mikey, and his heart was just not into it. And so that's when I started running solo. So there was a lot of changes going there. So I started out the year with a co-host. By the time 2023 ended, I did not have a co-host because that happened pretty early. And I had actually moved on to, got added on to like a podcasting family, which technically didn't start until the beginning of 2024, when I was officially added to their website. But I mean, it's been a little hectic because trying to keep up with recording, trying to make sure I stay on some kind of schedule. That's kind of bounced around a little bit and there was also a lot of things that happened, in like my family, because I told my wife at the beginning of 2023, I said, I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of big changes happening this year. Well, at the beginning of 2023, also, I was working, she was not working outside the home because she also has a travel agent business that she runs. But then a few months into it now, she's working at a tax preparation place. But we also pulled our son out of school because of some issues with the school, and some other incidents that had happened. And so now I'm home during the day because my son is being homeschooled. And so now I'm looking for work because I left my job in May because that was actually something else. If I hadn't, my son would have been at home all day long by himself, and a part of that's, yes, our choice, but adjusting everything around that, because typically I was recording both podcasts at night. Now, just like yesterday, I recorded both of them during the day.
Morning.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of depends. But if Dwaylen's available, of course, I mean, we have to do it whenever we are both available.
Right.
I don't want to force it and say, hey, you need to come on at this time, because sometimes things happen. But we were talking about going live, like what you do in StreamYard, and I had actually looked into it. But then when I had to take a hiatus, so I'm like, all right, let me hold off for a little bit. But it may give me a chance to actually bring it up live, by myself and just see how it goes, just kind of experimenting and then go from there.
Right.
But yeah, 2023 there just happened to be a lot of changes that were driven by the changes that were happening in my personal life.
One thing I love about Cubicle Chat, and I've noticed a lot, it's provided an opportunity for you specifically to take time. I mean, I don't know how many episodes I've heard you do it with your own daughter.
Yeah.
About movie reviews and stuff like that. So that, I mean, I think being able to just connect with, and do something that you love doing, but with your family, and being able to tag along, your daughter with it too. I just think that is also it's also funner to listen to.
Right. And she likes doing it. Now she's back in school.
Right.
She's actually asked me not to say where she goes to school just because there's, she's afraid of being doxxed, which I get it. Yeah. But she's back in college right now. She had actually spent 9 months in Orlando as part of the Disney College program, and now she's, of course, back in school. But she likes doing the reviews, but at the same time, if she's busy with class, and she also works, so I fit that around her schedule. And if she can't do it, she can't do it. Now, she's actually had ideas for shows, but most of the shows with her do revolve around something with pop culture, whether it be movies, TV shows, because I think we reviewed Stranger Things, just things like that. And, I've tried to get my son to come on. He's giving me ideas, but he's very, very camera shy. He does not want to be in front of a camera.
Cubicle Chat is not it's not on YouTube, is it?
No, Cubicle Chat is audio only.
So
any audio platform that you can think of, Cubicle Chat is more than likely there. If it's not there, let me know. cubiclechatpodcast@gmail.com, and I will do what I can to get it added.
talking about that, yeah, can you also just rattle off everything for both Armchair Cubicle Chat, from social media, contacts, and where you could find the podcast at?
Oh, Armchair Booking. The email address is armchairbookingpodcast@gmail.com. You can find it on Facebook at facebook.com/armchair booking. You can also find it on Instagram. If you just look up Armchair Booking Podcast or Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast, you can always find it there. I'm on TikTok. I'm on Twitter. Twitter, it's at Booking Armchair, because when I was first setting up everything, I found out that at Armchair Booking was already taken. Somebody's basically squatting on it. And I'm like, what are the odds of that? But somebody already has it. But of course, on YouTube, you just look up, I guess, put up there on the screen at Armchair Booking Podcast. You can find it there. YouTube, apparently, you can't put Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast. It's just way too many letters. They won't allow it.
Right.
But Cubicle Chat, it's on Facebook and it's on Twitter or X, or as Dwayne and I start calling it, Twix. On that, it's at cubicle_chat. Tell me it doesn't make sense. Twitter, X, Twix.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, now you're gonna start calling it Twix, and I hope your audience starts calling it Twix. They'll say, hey, go to Twix and go check it out. But yeah, there it's at cubicle_chat. And both shows are on every audio platform. We run it through Spreaker, kind of like the way you run your audio, also through Spreaker.
Yep.
And for Armchair Booking, there's also a merch site. It's tpublic.com/user/armchair-booking-podcast. Now, if you see the coffee mug, I actually showed this yesterday on the show too. You can no longer get these tumblers, but this is actually where I got it from. But you can get regular coffee mugs. You can also get T-shirts. You can get pillowcases. You can get hoodies. I mean, you can get a mask. I was actually just wearing it. I had to wear my mask yesterday. There we go.
Notebooks. I mean, I know I haven't invested into them yet, but I probably should, because I always, take notes, and I got, all the notepads, and I need to invest into some notebooks with my.
You can get a phone case.
Yep.
Like what I have there. And if you notice, I mean, there's different logos, different styles. And yeah, this mask, I mean, I was just wearing it whenever I was cleaning out the cat's litter box, because I don't know if you have a cat or not, but when you start scooping that litter, and if your litter is good, of course, it holds the smell down. But unfortunately, when you start trying to scoop it, it comes right back up.
Right.
And so I had that to kind of block out that smell, because, of course, urine is nothing but ammonia.
Right.
It can actually hurt your lungs. But yeah, you get all sorts of merchandise, there at the T-Public site, just like because I have a TNC Sports Talk shirt. Obviously, I'm not wearing it right now, but I do have one of your shirts. You have an Armchair Booking shirt.
I was not synchronizing today. I wish I was.
I wasn't even, I'd have to find the shirt, because I have so many T-shirts now that
I just rolled out of bed, looked like this. I just completely forgot. All the links and the descriptions and everything will be posted down below into the descriptions. Anything exciting that you're looking to try to advance forward this year out of your podcast?
Besides going live, hopefully live on video, which means going live straight to YouTube, Facebook, and probably Twitter or Twix. Besides that, trying to get more interviews. I did mention yesterday for Armchair Booking, I wasn't joking when I said, yes, I have been trying to get Shannon Moore on the show. And, I actually talked to him for about 15 seconds once. He said, call me back, because he was driving or he was talking to somebody. And I did. And one time, it's like the phone got hung up on right away. And another time I left him a message, but I'm like, I'm not going to chase after anybody for that, because, but trying to get him on the show, maybe part of that is because we're from the same area of North Carolina, because I lived in North Carolina before I moved to Kentucky. And so I know we know some of the same people, because my stepbrother did the wiring for his pool. He was the one who actually did the electrical wiring for his pool. So I know we know some mutual people, but just trying to get more interviews on Armchair Booking, and trying to get more interviews, non-wrestling interviews, obviously, on Cubicle Chat. And because I started doing that already, a little bit on Cubicle Chat because I had Jason Emmett from the Mixtape podcast.
Mhm.
Because and they actually had me on their podcast as well, because that's another podcast that really focuses on pop culture. But we were discussing, well, they actually had me on the show to discuss 1980s heavy metal. And, which, like I said, perfect, because I'm wearing, in fact, I was wearing this shirt when we recorded that show. I just not thought about that. And, but I had Jason because Jason has also written a novel, and he's like the audiobook version. He actually has his own podcast. It's called Lyric, the Novel. And so I invited him on the show to help promote that, because they had me on their show. And that part of that was, even though we weren't discussing wrestling, but part of it actually helped me promote my two podcasts. So trying to get more interviews, trying to find more topics to talk about. Cubicle Chat, I've also kicked around the idea of more than once a week, just in like having certain subjects on certain days.
Right.
Like Monday would be one thing, Tuesday be something else, Wednesday, just kind of having it like that. But it's a matter of, okay, do I have the time to do this every day? Or maybe like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, because I noticed that the throw-in, you're starting to do that kind of a Monday, Wednesday, Friday thing. But I mean, I get it, with the same thing though, when you have the time, because sometimes, we have other stuff going on. Obviously I'm not working right now. I'm not going to call myself unemployed. I'll just call myself on either a sabbatical or semi-retired.
Right.
Because I have been looking for work. I'm actually talking to somebody tomorrow. I'm having a Zoom interview with somebody about a different kind of thing, but I'm not sure if I'm going to do it or not, because it's very borderline MLM. And I'm like, I've done stuff like that before. It doesn't always work. I also do have my side hustle with something that, and you already know about it. It's something that's not an MLM, where I need to get my license, trying to get all my licenses, but it's personal financial advisor.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get that set up as well. Plus maybe get a side hustle, or almost like the gig economy, where it's freelance, helping people with Excel or Word or PowerPoint, just things like that. But I totally forgot where I was going with all that. But you're talking about changes for the show. Just, I'm always looking for ways to improve stuff, because as soon as you think, and this is really anything, not just podcasts, and as soon as you think, oh, I could just coast from here on out, that's when complacency sets in. And, when complacency sets in, then your quality can actually, you run the risk of it dropping.
Right.
So.
I mean, we've talked about it before. Podcasting, it takes you a year, 2 years to build up the fan base that you have now. And then you're gone for 1 week and you just lose all of it. So, I mean, I completely understand where you're coming from. Listen, I'm looking forward to what you guys have, what you have to offer, what Doylan has to offer, what Cubicle Chat has to offer, all in 2024. This is supposed to be a big year. Okay. We're supposed to continue to grow. And I can't wait to watch and see new stuff that comes from you guys. I always appreciate being on your show. Anytime you call me, I always do my best to try to be on and give you the best that I got. And I, just that's the podcasting world, right? I mean, just supporting one another. So, Steve, thank you so much for taking the time of your day to speak with us. And we can't wait to see you and what you guys do throughout this year. And hopefully we get you guys back on throughout the course of the year.
Oh, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Hopefully I can come on to the throw-in and TNC Sports Talk once again to support my friend Justin. And so we try to give you a shout out on every show. Every once in a while we miss, and I apologize for that if we don't give you a shout out, but we try to at least, say, hey, go check out Justin and the throw-in, because I know you actually had your own period where you couldn't do anything for a while, but I mean, You know what? Having your back operated on, that kind of, that'll kind of suck the wind right out of your sails.
Yeah, I completely understand that, but we'll get back together definitely again. Either I'll see you on my, on your podcast, or I'll see you on my, on mine, whichever one works the best. But thank you again, and we wish you the best in 2024.
All right, cool. We'll see you.
That's Steve Barber, Armchair Booking Wrestling Podcast, Cubicle Chat. You can find all the information in the descriptions alone. Go get them a nice follow and share on their social media pages as well. That's it. Until next time, you guys are listening to us here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.